Hi traders, in this lesson I'm going to be showing you how to detect hammer candles and shooting star candles. So if you're unfamiliar with this candlestick pattern, this is more or less what it looks like. This is a hammer candle, so is this one, maybe even these ones here depending on your preference for this particular candlestick pattern. In today's lesson I'm going to be showing you how I like to detect these patterns according to my preference, but as always you can change some of the filters and parameters of this pattern to your liking. So let me go over the rules of this pattern first, the objective rules that I use in my own scripts to determine whether or not a candlestick pattern is a hammer or a star. First of all, I tend not to discriminate between bullish and bearish hammers and shooting stars. So this, for example, would be a valid hammer candle according to my rules for this pattern. And what I found to work best in my own back testing on the markets I like to trade. The whole point of a hammer and shooting star candlestick pattern is that it is a sign of reversing momentum. So price opened here, it fell quite significantly to this wick, and then the bulls pushed this bar all the way back up to close near where it opened, in the upper third of this entire candlestick pattern. So personally, I don't care that this is bearish because it's still a sign to me of reversing bullish momentum, but I'll show you later in the lesson how you can exclude bullish and bearish hammers and stars if you want to. But before we get to that, let me go over the rules that I use in my manual trading to determine whether this is a valid hammer candle, and then we'll convert those rules into code. So the way I do this is I use the Fibonacci tool. So if I click on my Fibonacci tool and I drag it from the swing low here of this candle all the way up to the swing high of that candle, zoom in a little more here. What I want to see is the candle opening and closing in the upper 33.3% of this bar. And the way I determine that is if I double click on my Fib tool, I can change my 382 retracement to 333, click OK. And now this red line, let me turn off these other ones temporarily. This red line now represents the area that my candle must open and close in order to be considered a valid hammer candle. And it's the same for bearish candles, but the opposite direction. For a shooting star candle, like this one here, it's technically bullish, it's a green candle, but because of the way this candle played out, I consider it a bearish pattern. The reason for that is if I click at the top of this bar and drag this fib down to the low of this bar, you can see that this candle only just fits within our shooting star range. So this 33.3% area of this candle from its high to its low. So it's quite simple. That's all I look for in this candlestick pattern. There are some other filters you can add to this. For example, you can check if it's a swing high over recent price action. That's a great filter, or a swing low for hammer candles. Another filter is the actual size of the bar, because sometimes you can get very, very small shooting star candles like that, where if you drag your fib out, it might be a valid shooting star candle, but it's tiny compared to recent price action. So one way to avoid that is to use a simple ATR filter, but we'll cover that later in the lesson. Let's open up the Pine editor and get coding. So the first thing we need to do is get our fib level for measuring the candle like I just showed you. So let's zoom in on a hammer candle here. We'll start with hammer candles, and let's just code out what we need in order to detect these bars here. So this green bar is an example of an invalid hammer candle because it opened below our red line, our 33.3%. So let me find a different example. So same for this bar here, not valid. Let's check this one, also not valid. So we'll just stick with this original one that I had on my chart, and let's zoom in a bit here. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get our fib level. You could make this a user input if you want to. We'll do that at the end of the lesson, but for now, I'm just going to set it to 0.333. And now here, I'll just comment this and say get fib level. Now, the next thing we need to do is calculate the Fibonacci level for the current candle. So we need our bull fib and our bear fib. So the bull fib is for hammers, the bear fib is for shooting stars. And to calculate that price, to calculate that upper third line in the sand for the total candle size, we need to do a little bit of simple math here. We need to subtract the low from the high and then multiply that value by our fib level and then add the high back on to that resulting value. So this right here will give us our bull Fibonacci level, our 33.3% mark for the current bar. And then we do the same thing for our bearish fib. We need to subtract the high from the low, multiply that by our fib level, and then add the low to that value. And that's it. We are now calculating our 33.3% upper third and lower third of hammers and stars. The next thing we need to do is determine which price source closes or opens highest or lowest. Now this is for our filter that detects if the candle opens and closes within our upper third. So in the case of a hammer candle, all that matters is that we do not have an open or close below this line. So we want to check which value is lower, the open or the close, and then check that against our 33.3% line. So to do that, we need to get the lowest body and the highest body for our shooting stars. So for the lowest body, we just check, is the close lower than the open? Question mark. If so, then set lowest body to close. Otherwise, we need to set it to the open, since that means the open is lower than the close. And then we do the same thing for our highest. Is the current bar's close greater than its open? If so, set the highest body to the close. Otherwise, set it to the open. Now that we have these two values, we can check the current bar against them. We can check if the current bar meets our rules for this pattern. So here we can say, determine if we have a valid hammer or shooting star candle. So we have hammer candles and star candles. For a hammer candle, we need to check, is the lowest body greater than or equal to our bull fib, our 33.3% upper third. And for star candles, we need to check, is the highest body less than or equal to our bear fib level, our lower 33.3% range. Now that's all we have to do in order to detect these candlestick patterns. Now we can plot this onto the chart, plot our candle patterns. I'll use the plot shape function again. I'll start with hammer candle. I'll give it a style of shape dot triangle up, a location of location dot below bar, and a color of color dot green. And now if I save my code, we should be getting a green triangle beneath this bar right here. So let me save the script, and there we go. So this candle meets our rules. The lowest body in this case is its closing price, and its closing price is above our 33.3% mark of the entire candle size. That gives me a valid hammer candle. And let's plot our shooting star candles as well. So plot shape, star candle, triangle down, location above bar, and color is red. Save our code, reset my chart. I'll delete this Fibonacci tool. And now if I zoom in, you can see we have a whole bunch of hammer and star candles being detected. Now, obviously, just like with our fractal engulfing candle pattern, you can add all kinds of filters to this pattern. You could add indicator overbought or oversold levels. You could add a moving average and only detect hammer candles if price is trading above the moving average, and ignore shooting star candles if momentum is above the moving average. And you can also detect if the pattern is a swing high, or if it's just occurring in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of price action. Maybe you want to ignore any pattern that occurs within consolidation, and you're only looking for price extremes. One other thing we could do is add a filter to check if the bar is bullish or bearish. So maybe you want to ignore green shooting star candles and red hammer candles. Let's do that before we wrap up this script. So let's add another filter here. Let's call this color filter, and let's turn these into user inputs. So I'm going to change this to input.float, and I will give it a title of fib level and a default value of 0.333. Now you could change all these other parameters, add a tooltip explaining what this does and all of that, but we'll skip that for now since it's not really relevant to this particular lesson. Now, color filter is going to be a Boolean input, and we'll title this color filter, and we'll give it a default value of false. So by default, this filter is not turned on and is ignored. So now let's add our color filter to this code. To do that, all I need to do is come down to where we detect our actual pattern and add a new condition onto the end here. And here I need to say, do we have a valid hammer candle And is color filter not turned on, or the current bar bullish? Did it close higher than it opened? So if color filter is false, which it is by default, then this will just return true and be ignored, and we'll just be detecting hammer candles regardless of the color. But if color filter is not false and it's true, which means it's turned on, then PineScript will check if this is true. And so if this is false and this is false, then the candlestick pattern will be ignored. The only way that would happen is if the user comes up and turns color filter on, but the current bar is not bullish. So let me show you this in action. Let's save our code. So let me find an example here. We haven't done the shooting star yet, so we need to find an example of a red hammer. So here's one right here. This bar closes as bearish, even though it is being detected as a hammer candle. So now let's open up the settings menu, and when I turn color filter on, this setup should go away. So let me click this tick box here, and there we go. That pattern is now no longer being detected because this bar did not match our color filter setting. If I zoom out, we are now only detecting green hammer candles. So let me add this filter onto our shooting stars as well. So here I need to say, do we have a shooting star candle, and is color filter not turned on, or did the current bar close bearish? Save our code, reset the chart. Color filter is still on. So now if I zoom in, any shooting star candles we are detecting will need to be bearish candles, and any hammers need to be bullish candles. So that's it for this lesson. The last thing I will do before we wrap it up is just show you how to add one more filter onto this. And one last filter I'll show you with this particular candlestick pattern is how to check the candle size against the current ATR value. So let me change this to say get user input, and we'll add another filter here. We'll say ATR filter, and we'll set this to a input.float, and we'll title this ATR filter, and the default value will be 0.1. So the hammer candle we detect and the shooting star candle we detect must have a candle size at least 10% of the current ATR. So it will basically eliminate any micro hammers and stars from our chart. Now let's add some more code here and say check our ATR filter. Now we need to get the ATR value. To do that, we use ta.atr, and then we need to pass in a length. So we'll just go with the default 14 period. You could add a user input for this as well if you want to. And then we need to get the current candle size. So that's just the high minus the low. That will give us the current candle size in pips or points. And now we can say ATR filter check equals, is the current candle size greater than or equal to the current ATR value multiplied by our ATR filter value. And now I can copy this ATR filter check and throw it on the end of our candle pattern detection code. Save the script. And now we have another filter added to the script that will eliminate small hammers and stars. And we can tweak that number here. So let's find a small shooting star candle. This one will do. Let's change our value until this candlestick pattern is removed. So let's bump this up to 0.5, and it's still there. Let's try 1.0. Now both of these are gone. Let's try 0.8. There we go. So now this candle here is not greater than 80% of the current ATR, but this candle is. So we're now excluding small hammers and stars, but including relatively appropriate sized hammers and stars. I'll leave this source code below the video for you guys to play around with if you want to. And so you can basically copy and paste this code into your scripts and add your own filters to this code, your own indicator and market condition filters, and see what you can come up with. So thanks for watching. I'll speak with you in the next lesson. Take care.